AITA for just deciding not to travel because my wife made reservations for Disney again? My wife, Jess, and I have been together for 13 years now, both of us 39 years old. It's been a pretty solid marriage overall. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but we've always managed to figure things out. One thing we struggled with early on was money. In our 20s and early 30s, we went through some serious financial hardship. We were the classic paycheck-to-paycheck couple, skipping date nights, delaying home repairs, and constantly stressing over bills. But we worked hard, saved where we could, and finally, in the past few years, we've managed to get to a place where we can breathe. More than that, we're finally able to do things like take vacations. The problem is that Jess only ever wants to go to one place, Disney World. It started off cute, honestly. We went there for our honeymoon, and I'll admit I got swept up in her excitement. I figured, hey, it's her dream trip. Let's go all out. And we did. The Mickey Mouse ears, photos with characters, overpriced churros, you name it, we did it. It made her happy, and that was enough for me. But then it kept happening. Every time we talked about taking a trip, it was Disney, Disney, Disney. Over the years, we've been there 9 times. Every vacation we've taken, whether it's a quick weekend getaway or something we've saved up for months, has been to Disney World. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate Disney. I can appreciate the magic and nostalgia it brings to people, Jess especially. But the magic wore off for me a long time ago. Now, it's less of an adventure and more of a repetitive routine. Fly to Orlando, eat the same Mickey-shaped ice cream, take the same photo in front of Cinderella's castle, and ride the same rides. Then we come home, rinse and repeat. Here's the kicker. Jess knows I'm over it. I've told her, maybe not as forcefully as I could have, but enough that she's aware. She just doesn't care. She doesn't seem to have any interest in traveling anywhere else. For her, Disney isn't just a trip, it's the only trip. This brings us to our most recent argument. We're planning a trip for April, and predictably, Jess suggested Disney. I tried to gently bring up the idea of going somewhere new, Hawaii, specifically. I even sold it as a relaxing, tropical getaway. Spas, beaches, great food, the works. Jess looked genuinely confused. She asked me, "Why would we go to Hawaii?" I didn't even know how to respond to that, but I reiterated that it could be something different, a new experience for both of us. She mumbled something and walked away, and I figured that was the end of it. A few days later, she came back and announced she had made hotel reservations for Hawaii. At first, I was shocked in the best way. I thought, wow, she's really trying. But then she showed me the reservation. She had booked us a stay at Aulani, the Disney resort in Hawaii. I swear my stomach dropped. I couldn't even hide my frustration. I told her, Jess, I'm really tired of Disney. I just want to go somewhere new, somewhere not tied to Mickey Mouse for once. She got defensive immediately. She told me she was compromising by choosing Aulani and that I should be grateful. She spent the time to plan it. I tried explaining that this wasn't really a compromise. It was still Disney, just with palm trees instead of castles. I asked her outright if she'd consider any trip that wasn't Disney-related. Her answer? A flat-out no. That's when I lost my patience and told her I wasn't going at all. Now she's furious. She canceled the Aulani reservation and started making plans to go to Disney World again, this time without me. She's even looking for a friend to join her. Meanwhile, I'm left here wondering if I'm the asshole for not just sucking it up and going along with what she wanted again. So, Reddit, AITA, I feel like I've reached my breaking point, but maybe I could have handled it better.
Update 1?
1 week later. After a lot of thinking, I realized the only way forward was to have a serious conversation with Jess about our vacations. It wasn't easy to approach. How do you tell your spouse that something they clearly love is making you miserable without sounding ungrateful or mean?
But I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine anymore, so I decided to lay it all out.
When I brought it up, Jess's reaction was exactly what I'd expected. Confusion and a little defensiveness. She didn't understand why I had such a problem with Disney. She kept saying things like, "But we always have fun there," and "It's so easy for us. We know how to plan everything perfectly." I could tell she thought I was overcomplicating something she saw as simple. That's when I told her the truth, as calmly as I could. Jess, I don't think I've had fun there in years. It feels like we're doing the same trip over and over again, and I need something different. I also explained how I felt about our last argument over the Hawaii trip. I told her that Aulani wasn't really a compromise because it was still Disney. It was just Disney dressed up as something new. She was quiet for a while after that. I could see she was thinking, trying to process what I was saying. Eventually, she admitted she didn't realize how much I disliked the trips. She said Disney had always been her idea of the perfect vacation. Fun, familiar, and nostalgic. "It's comfortable," she said. "I know what to expect, and it never lets me down." That was when it clicked for me. Jess wasn't just obsessed with Disney for the fun of it. It was a safe place for her, a kind of escape where she didn't have to worry about things going wrong. And honestly, I get that. Life hasn't exactly been a cakewalk for us, and maybe she's held on to Disney as a way to feel like everything's okay. But I also told her that while I understood her reasons, I needed something different. I needed us to grow out of this habit, to try new things, to create new memories that didn't involve Cinderella's castle. "This isn't about hating Disney," I said. "It's about wanting more for us, new adventures, new experiences. Don't you think we deserve that?" To my surprise, Jess nodded. She said she didn't want to be the reason I stopped enjoying our vacations together, and she agreed to try exploring other options. But there was still some hesitation in her voice. She admitted that the idea of going somewhere unfamiliar made her anxious. What if it didn't live up to our expectations? What if it ended up being a disaster? I reassured her that we could start small, maybe with a trip that still had a little of the structure she's used to but wasn't Disney. We started looking at options together, and I could see her slowly warming up to the idea. She even got excited about the possibility of visiting Italy, mostly because of the food. But hey, it's a start. For now, things are in a better place. We haven't finalized anything yet, and I'm being cautious not to push too hard. I know how much Jess loves Disney, and I don't want to make her feel like she's losing something important, but I also can't ignore how I feel anymore. This is about finding balance, and I think we're starting to take the first steps toward that. We'll see where this goes. Part of me is still worried that when it comes time to book something, Jess will default back to Disney. But for the first time, I feel like she's really listening, and that gives me hope. I'll keep updating as things unfold. This is definitely not the end of the conversation, just the beginning of a much-needed change. Update 2 weeks later. Jess and I finally decided to step out of our comfort zone and try a vacation that doesn't revolve around Disney. After a lot of back and forth, we settled on Hawaii, a destination I've always dreamed of visiting, and one that Jess agreed to as long as we avoided staying at Aulani, the Disney resort. It felt like a breakthrough, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about planning a trip together. Things started off promising. We spent an evening researching different islands, talking about activities like snorkeling, hiking, and visiting local markets. Jess even got excited about the idea of a luau and mentioned wanting to learn how to make tropical cocktails. It felt like we were finally on the same page, which made me hopeful that this trip could mark a turning point for us. But then something happened that threw me off. While going over our itinerary, I noticed a booking Jess hadn't mentioned, a local Disney-themed tour on one of the islands. It wasn't an official Disney experience, but it was a private excursion that included stops at locations inspired by Disney magic, and even a lunch served on Mickey Mouse-shaped plates. I was confused at first, thinking it must have been a mistake or something she'd booked before we agreed on the whole no Disney thing. When I brought it up to her, she hesitated for a moment before admitting she had booked it intentionally. "It's just a small part of the trip," she said. "I thought it could be fun, and it's my way of compromising." I didn't know how to respond at first. On the one hand, I could see she was trying to make the trip more appealing for herself, which I understand. But on the other hand, it felt like she was clinging to Disney as a security blanket, instead of fully embracing the idea of trying something new. This wasn't the compromise we had talked about. It was more like sneaking a piece of Disney into a trip that was supposed to be different. When I told Jess how I felt, she got defensive. She said that she had gone along with planning the trip my way, and that this was her way of making sure she could still enjoy it. "You know Disney is important to me," she said. "I don't see why this has to be such a big deal." And maybe she has a point. Maybe I'm overreacting to something small. But it also makes me wonder, is Jess truly open to change, or is she just humoring me to keep the peace? Part of me feels like this trip is a test of whether we can find a balance in our relationship when it comes to our differences. If she can't let go of Disney for one trip, what does that say about the future? I haven't decided how to handle this yet. I could let it slide and go along with the Disney tour, hoping that the rest of the trip will be enough to make it feel new and exciting. Or I could push back and risk starting another argument, which I really don't want. I don't want this to turn into a battle of wills. At the end of the day, I just want us to enjoy our time together. But I also want to feel like my needs and boundaries are being respected, not just worked around. For now, I'm trying to stay optimistic. Maybe this trip will still be the fresh start we need, or maybe it'll make us realize we have more to work through than we thought. Either way, I'll keep you all updated as things progress. Update 3. Over a month later, we just got back from our trip to Hawaii, and to say it was a mixed bag would be an understatement. On paper, everything went fine. We stayed in a beautiful resort, explored some of the most stunning beaches I've ever seen, and even tried things like snorkeling and hiking. But beneath the surface, it was clear that Jess wasn't really enjoying herself. From the moment we arrived, I could sense her unease. She didn't complain outright, but little comments here and there gave her away. The hotel is nice, but it's not as magical as Disney. This luau is fun, but I kind of miss the character dinners. The service here is great, but it's not the same as a Disney cast member. It was like every new experience had to be measured against Disney. And unsurprisingly, nothing lived up to her expectations. At first, I tried to ignore it. I thought maybe she just needed time to adjust to something so different. But as the days went on, her mood didn't improve. She wasn't actively unhappy, but she wasn't excited about anything either. It felt like she was going through the motions, just waiting for the trip to be over so she could get back to her comfort zone. One night, I decided to bring it up. We were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room overlooking the ocean, and I asked her, "Are you okay? You don't seem like you're having fun." At first, she brushed it off, saying everything was fine. But after a bit of prodding, she finally opened up. Jess admitted that she'd been struggling the entire trip. She told me that Disney isn't just a vacation destination for her. It's a place that feels safe, familiar, and full of happy memories. "It's like I know exactly what to expect there," she said. "I don't have to worry about being disappointed or feeling out of place. Everything is designed to be perfect, and I guess I've come to rely on that." Hearing her say that hit me harder than I expected. I realized that her attachment to Disney wasn't just about nostalgia or preference. It was about comfort and control. The idea of venturing into the unknown, even for something as simple as a vacation, was genuinely anxiety-inducing for her. I told her I understood and I really meant it, but I also explained that, for me, going somewhere new is part of the excitement. It's about taking risks, making mistakes, and discovering things together. "It doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful," I said. "In fact, sometimes the imperfect moments are what make the best memories." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. For Jess, the idea of embracing imperfection doesn't come naturally. It's something that makes her uncomfortable. And while I respect that, it's also clear that our different approaches to travel are a bigger issue than I initially thought. By the end of the trip, we were both trying harder to meet in the middle. Jess made an effort to be more present and enjoy the experiences for what they were, and I did my best not to push her too far out of her comfort zone. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel a little forced at times. Now that we're home, I'm left wondering where we go from here. This trip was supposed to be a step forward for us, a way to break out of the Disney rut and find common ground. But instead, it highlighted just how deeply rooted her attachment to Disney really is, and how much work we still have to do to balance her need for familiarity with my desire for new adventures. I'm not giving up, though. I think this trip was an important wake-up call for both of us, and it gave me a better understanding of what drives Jess's preferences. The question now is how we use that understanding to move forward. For those of you who've been following this saga, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Has anyone else dealt with a similar situation? How do you find a balance between comfort and growth in a relationship? I'm open to any advice as we navigate this next chapter.
Update 4.
2 months later. It's been about 2 months since I first posted, and I'm happy to report that things have taken a positive turn for Jess and me. The Hawaii trip, while a mixed experience, opened up some much-needed conversations between us. For the first time in a long time, we really started digging into why Disney has such a powerful hold on Jess, and by extension, why our differences in travel preferences have caused so much tension in our marriage. Through these conversations, I came to understand that her love for Disney goes beyond just a personal preference. It's deeply tied to her childhood, where she found comfort and joy during an otherwise difficult time in her life. Jess shared stories about how her family would scrape together money to take her to Disney World as a kid, even when times were tough. Those trips were a rare source of happiness and stability for her growing up, and she's carried that emotional connection into adulthood. She also opened up about how the familiarity of Disney helps her feel in control. When life feels overwhelming, Disney provides a sense of predictability that she doesn't get elsewhere. I hadn't fully grasped this before, but hearing her explain it helped me connect the dots. It's not just about liking Disney or being stuck in a rut. It's about how it makes her feel. At the same time, Jess came to understand my perspective better. She admitted she hadn't realized how much her fixation on Disney was affecting me and how limited I felt by our lack of variety in vacations. For her, Disney was a source of joy, so she assumed I felt the same way, even though I tried to express otherwise. With that mutual understanding, we started talking about how we could move forward in a way that worked for both of us. We agreed that our relationship could use more shared experiences outside of Disney, things that could help us build new, meaningful memories together. That's when the idea of trying a dance class came up. Neither of us has ever danced seriously before, but the idea felt like a good mix of fun, challenge, and connection. Plus, it's something completely unrelated to Disney, so it forces us to step out of that bubble in a different way. Jess was a little hesitant at first. She joked about having 2 left feet, but she eventually agreed to give it a shot. We've been going to weekly dance classes for about a month now, and I have to say, it's been a game changer. The first class was awkward, to say the least. We were both stepping on each other's toes and laughing like crazy, but it broke the ice in a way we hadn't experienced in years. There's something about learning a new skill together, especially one that requires trust and communication, that's brought us closer. What's even more surprising is how much Jess seems to be enjoying it. She's not just going along with it for my sake, she's genuinely invested. She's even started practicing steps at home, which is something I never thought I'd see. This doesn't mean we're done with Disney entirely. We've talked about balancing it with other types of experiences, and I think that's a compromise we can both live with. Jess still wants Disney to be part of our lives, and I've told her I'm okay with that, as long as it's not the only thing we do. Looking back, I think the key to all of this was recognizing that our differences weren't about being stubborn or difficult. They were about deeper needs and fears that we hadn't fully communicated before. By taking the time to listen to each other without judgment, we've been able to find a middle ground that works for both of us. For anyone who's been following this journey, I just want to say, if you're struggling with something similar in your relationship, don't underestimate the power of really understanding where your partner is coming from. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. I'll keep updating as we keep building on this progress, but for now, I'm feeling more hopeful about our future than I have in a long time.